For me, nationals was like it slowly became the most important thing in my personal photography calendar, like even now. I don't really care about anything else in cycling, but the nationals has to be documented because that's the highest level of cycling activity in India.
In India.
And if that is documented, I have done my piece for the sport. And for me, this last block was the tough one because I tried doing all three nationals: MTB nationals, road nationals, track nationals. So for me, that was like, and I most cases I self-fund these things. I mean, the print sale that we spoke about literally funded the track nationals. I sold prints and then I went to Hyderabad and ate some really basic stuff. We don't value mental health. There's so much emphasis on physical health, but we just push mental health, saying, we are strong, we are built better for that. We don't work it. I mean, we don't do anything to get mentally strong. We don't mentally condition. And if you notice, athletes at the highest level of sport, mental conditioning is an integral part of the sport. How much of that are we doing? Zilch. It's a very self thing for me. That's where I learn from. That's where I learn photography from. That's where I learn life skills from, survival skills from. And there are days wherein when I come back, when I'm eating and I'm complaining that I don't have some food, I'm like, on a race day, this will be a very delicious food. I will just eat it without complaining and go.
I am Mikey Winky, and this is the Working Athlete Podcast. Here, I talk to working athletes from all walks of life, experts from various sports, to provide you with inspiration, training tips, time management, and lifestyle advice. If this is something that interests you, please make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any future episodes. Today's guest is someone who had a great impact on the sport of cycling in India, not as a rider but as a photographer. Years ago, he left a plush corporate job to pursue his passion for photography. Wedding photography, product photography, sports photography, you name it, he has done it. It is through his sports photography that he had most impact on the cycling landscape in India. Over the years, we have been fortunate to follow various events like Indian Cycling Nationals through his amazing pictures. Through his pictures, he has inspired many around the country towards cycling, including himself. He now cycles and runs to keep fit for life and for his photography gigs. Today, we will dive into stories behind some of those great pictures and his journey as an endurance athlete and as a photographer. Welcome to the Working Athlete Podcast, Jay. Great to have you on the show.
Pleasure, man. Pleasure.
Let's start by talking about the print sale that is going on right now, so that the audience can get those amazing pictures from you.
So, sometime in 2020, when the pandemic started and there was absolutely no work, even before that, I was selling some of my work, and my archives are about 12, 13 years old, ranging from travel to cycling, and most of it is just sitting in my hard disk. And then some friends, I started printing for some close friends, and then it became a thing, and then I started putting it out on Instagram, and I just sell pretty much all my prints through Instagram. I don't even have a website. I have no payment gateway. I just talk about the picture, and people in my community who follow my work, if they like to either gift it to somebody or have it for themselves, they place an order, ask me about it, and then I suggest a size, and then they pick up prints. This helped me in two things. One, interact with the. I mean, you keep assuming that only like 20 people are seeing what you're creating, and then you start realizing that there are people who have been following your work for a long time, and what each one's preference, and you think you liked a certain picture, and then you realize that a lot of people also like the same picture. I mean, I got to know a lot more about the people who follow my work, which is amazing for an artist because you interact with people and they tell you about their life and why they like what they seek inspiration from your work. So yeah, Prince Hale for me is like one of my main livelihood right now. Yeah, so you can just head out to my Instagram and you'll see it on my highlights. And yeah, I mean, the pandemic is also making me do a lot of new, unique things. I'm starting this new thing called virtual photography, where you don't have to be physically present and you can shoot people cutting across the internet and stuff.
Ah,
So yeah, working on a whole bunch of new things and editing videos and a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah.
awesome. We'll put the links to your Insta profile and social handles in the show notes
Mhm.
so that people. When did you get into photography? You were in corporate, working in corporate, right?
Yeah, so photography for me, not many know that my photography journey started when I was very young. It's a childhood thing. My dad was into photography, as in I mean, I'm the only black sheep in the family. I'm the only non-doctor in my family. My dad got into photography. He was a very creative person, in spite of being an anesthetist. And those days it was film. And I was about third standard, fourth standard kind of a thing.
Mm.
Then later, you start realizing film photography is quite expensive a process. If you're already struggling for a living, then photography becomes a really, really expensive hobby back then.
Mm.
I still kept taking pictures consistently, mostly to look cool amongst your peers. I didn't have an eye. I was just doing it because I liked the whole holding a camera and figuring stuff out. Then it's only when I moved to Bangalore, got into a corporate job in Bangalore, working for Oracle. At that point, I realized I had enough money to buy a digital camera, and digital was like a rage, as in like not many people were buying it, and right now it's so common. I mean, we don't even know the world before digital images, but there was a time, and it was so cool. It was 30,000 40,000 rupees for a digital camera, and that's how it started. And it all coincided with me traveling a lot on motorcycles.
Okay.
So I started traveling a lot on motorcycles, and you had a digital camera, no Facebook, no Instagram to please, and you just took a lot of pictures because you wanted to take the pictures, not for social acceptance.
Yeah.
So that changed my whole. So I would say photography as a seed came into my life very early when I was a young kid.
Through dad and stuff.
Yeah, but the development happened because the digital photography and it I considered as a career choice only because I started traveling and after I moved to Bangalore and stuff.
So um, was it like hard to uh, take that decision to move into a photography completely from
Uh,
away from corporate?
Not exactly. I mean, like, the right thing to say is it was super difficult call, but it wasn't. I just did a lot of stupid things since I was a child. As in, I kept doing, when everybody says go right, I always habituated to going left. And that was my second nature. And everybody said, you need to be an engineer or a doctor. I said, I'm going to study science. And everybody said, you need to be a technology person. I became a business guy. So for me, doing the contrarian thing just became a habit pattern over the years. It was not very difficult. It was stupid, like a blind, stupid call. I mean, my 40-year-old self, if I look back at my 30-year-old self when I quit my job and got married and took up photography, all within 2 weeks. Uh,
All within 2 weeks.
yeah. I quit and then got married on May 24th. And then what does the groom do? He's trying to figure life out. So I've been and everybody was supportive. My parents thought it was. I mean, my parents, irrespective of how much it was counterintuitive for them, they grudgingly accepted he'll figure shit out. Then the same with pretty much my wife. Freya's like pretty much accepted me as a photographer a long time before I accepted myself as a photographer. So the support was insane, blind faith, and there's no other way. If I had thought it through, I wouldn't have done it. It looked stupid. Why would you leave a lucrative job
Yeah.
and take up and wedding photography at that? My
Yeah.
dad's first question is, "You studied that much to go and take pictures of weddings?"
Right.
So, and for me, it was more a business sense. I studied so much that I knew in India, weddings will never stop. Pandemic, no pandemic, weddings will happen.
Right.
So that was my logic, and nobody was shooting weddings back then. So, and it just made sense, and I took it up. Well, how I panicked 3 months later is a different story, but it was an easy move though.
Okay. Okay. So when was this? Which year?
2010.
2010.
Everything in my life happens around those 10 years. I was born in 1980. Everything happens on the 10th year. So
Okay.
2010 is when I got married, I quit my job, and I became a full-time photographer.
Okay, okay. And you was just mentioned about panicking after 3 months. So what was that?
Yeah, so the greatest drug in the world is salary.
Right.
And the moment you're deprived of salary, you will, like, the first initial phases is like, what do I do?
Yeah.
There's no appraisal. You're used to 10 years of receiving on the last working day of the month, whether you had a terrible month or a good month, salary comes.
Correct.
But now nothing comes. You still have to pay rent. You still have to pay EMIs. Back then, I had a shit ton of bad debts. I mean, my corporate, I was terrible with money, and I spent a lot, and then I had to pay that back. And now I'm a photographer. How do I pay it back? Lifestyle has to change. Panic. You're married, and as soon as you're married, there's so much of social pressures that married life has to be like this. And yeah, all that just smothered me in 3-4 months. So I had to figure life. I mean, like, it was completely a new. I had to reset, slow down. Yeah, the first 1, 2, 3 years were fairly stressful time.
Right. So it took you a while to kind of get into that professional photographer mode.
No, I was a professional photographer on day one. That's how I always say. There is
Correct.
no transition period.
Right.
What is a professional photographer? My single source of revenue is from
Is from
photographer.
photography,
When
yeah.
the day I stopped working and became a photographer, that's it.
Right.
Photography is the only where money comes.
Absolutely.
So I became a professional photographer, but for me to settle into that journey, it took me about 3-4 years. Like any new business, I believe that you take about 3 years. If you're lucky, you take about 3 years. If you're unlucky, you take about 5 years or maybe even longer to settle into the nuances of the business, the good, bad, and the ugly.
Right.
That's when you start becoming good at it, because photography has a lot of enjoyable parts for different people and not so enjoyable parts. You are successful only when you embrace the whole package. You have to be good at the good and the ugly parts. And that took me about 3-4 years. And then you fight it, and then you keep pushing that your personal boundaries more and more, and yeah, took about 3-4 years at least.
Nice. But you, how did you get into kind of sports photography as well?
Sports photography, weird. A couple of things. I mean, since I came, I mean, photography for me started with motorcycling, and then I started. I was doing a lot of. At least a few years, I was clocking 30,000 kilometers on the motorcycle every other weekend, where motorcycle rides. My job interviews involved this crazy conversation saying, I will take 45 days leave every year as a single block.
As a single block.
As a single block.
Okay.
If you're not up to it, let's not talk about this job.
Yeah.
So that was the negotiation thing for most of my job profiles. So motorcycle ruled my life for 3-4 years. That's where I met my wife. That's where I met all my friends. Cycling came to me because of motorcycling. Some of the friends in motorcycling community used to run Bike Zone, which was the big forum back then.
Abi.
Yeah. So and he used to ride a cycle, and then around him, a lot of people, oh, there is a cycle. It's not only Thunder MTB was like the greatest cycle man built at that point.
Right.
Then slowly, oh, Trek, oh, this, oh, that. And like back then, like these are expensive cycle, 20,000 rupees. Now the same cycles are prohibitively expensive, but and then go to Tirupati was like as if you go to Tirupati itself.
Yeah.
And you eat more vadas and then you come back. So cycling happened first, and cycling photography happened much later for me. Cycling as a community activity, um, like even before I think there was one decathlon in Bangalore. There was
Sarjapur.
yeah, it was outside city limits, and it was a community activity back then. And Bangalore always had an active. It's not like it's now. It always had a super involved cycling community.
2008 and all.
And I've seen all of these guys like bots from their shack shop, pretty much everybody in cycling when they started out, and we all used to hang around in some form or the other, and the passion for cycling is what brought people in. There was no business, there was no no Instagram, no social media. People just did it because they just loved doing it.
Right.
So that's how sports photography started. It started with TFN.
So you mentioned you kind of got into photography through motorbiking.
Yes.
And had common friends through motorbiking and cycling.
True.
And that's how the TFN connection came.
Pretty much.
Did you cycle?
No,
around that time?
I did cycle. I had a Firefox Silver Fox bad attitude.
Firefox bad.
No. This
Silver
is
Fox.
Silver Fox. It was Firefox's high top end MTV. I bought it secondhand for 5,000 rupees back then, and like super good deal and all. And then I used to go around riding again with Abhi and a bunch of people in South Bangalore. I was a South Bangalore guy, and like I consider North Bangaloreans as outcasts. And in South Bangalore, the standard rite of passage is you go to Silkboard flyover and go to Tirupati, and then you come back. And that was wild enough. I mean, like 40 kilometers, you're pretty much, and then in the middle you will have flats, and then the whole 7 people will sit and fix flats, and it was fun. It was a very different cycling community back then. I'm talking about 2006, 2007, 2008 types. That introduced me to a whole different world of cycling. There are other people, and then there was a sub culture of cycling in Bangalore, which was way more serious. TFN, there was an image that I saw in Orkut, if my memory is right. There's this photographer friend of mine called PV. He shot one of the earlier TFNs, and there's this picture of a cyclist, the cleats, the pedals, and there's a feet on it, and there's a camera right next to it. And I was like, wow, how did the photographer get to that angle? As in, like, was he lying on the floor? Was he taking, that's a pretty cool picture, and who took it? And then I'm like, okay, I mean, by then I would have cycled like 4-5 cycle rides and just go around loitering around. I'm like, okay, so you can do this in cycle? I mean, people travel in cycle. How stupid can they go for 8 days? And then all of this comes in because it's all in Bangalore. Again, like TFN starts in Bangalore back then. Then it so happened that it's a one-off connection. Deepak, who's a part of the TFN org, was somewhere related. I mean, like, it just, the word spread, and then I got in touch with them, and they said, come and volunteer. That was your first year in
2011, of course.
2011. Yeah. So 2010, did I do any cycling? No. I mean, I think I used to go and watch these downhill boys in Turahalli forests.
Right. Yeah.
Nelly used to, I think he was not even working anywhere. He was just cycling.
Yeah, cycling. Yeah.
So Nelly, Iggy, all those boys downhill. So downhill, I used to see downhill. And I think Deepak used to hang around that gang. BBCH didn't exist. We used to collect coins for BBCH in bots.
That's BBCH existed.
In a very small fashion. That's the early days of pretty much everything. So that was my early days of sports photography itself. Not a conscious call, just a conscious effort to hang around with like-minded people, have good time, take pictures. Most of the first few years of sports photography was done for fun. There was no money involved, to the point where Freya even asked, saying, "Why are you wasting your time doing this stuff? Go make money." And but I enjoy doing it, so I just, and she also, like, she came to her TFN to blog about it and stuff.
Right.
So it slowly, my friends became her friends even in the cycling community. So.
Right. So 2011 TFN was your first sports event
Yep,
as such.
big one. Yeah,
Big one.
yeah.
So what was the experience like?
Massive learning. I didn't even know what a road cycle meant, and I didn't know, geez, half the things. I didn't know what FTP meant. I didn't know what a. I mean, right now, I'm obsessed with cycling as a competitive sport. I'll be one of the very few people in India who sees the pretty much most of the World Tour races that are there. Bootleg, non-bootleg. I'll be doing fantasy leagues. So that level of knowledge came. I did at that point zero. That was the first year for. I mean, I met a lot of people who I still stay in touch with. Vicky, Hari, Doc. I mean, the whole dynamics of a racing team, Spectrum team, pretty much stole you. By Kannur, you were with Veloscope, and then by Kannur, you were with Spectrum Racing. So all of these things, I'm like, okay, there is a whole bunch of complete, and these are different. I mean, you have IT guys, you have doctors, and then you had Raj, who was a photographer slash drummer slash world traveler, and he was really good at cycling. I mean, like, and for me to see Raj's, that those days it was the F10 Pinarello Dogma.
Yeah. He still has it.
He still has it, but like every time I see it, back then I was like, wow, this is a piece of art. How do people ride this stuff? No electronic shifting, manual, amazing stuff. And then and how people push themselves. Compare that to now, most people are fitter than what I saw them in 2010. You are. So is pretty much all of them.
Right.
So it changed me in a very different way. So my experience for TF in 2011 was a lot of absorbing, learning, meeting, making a lot of friends. The reason I still shoot cycling today is because of the experiences I had back then. There was a whole community thing
Right.
that I think, yeah, from Dhananjay in Spectrum Physio, I stay in touch with everybody from that tour.
Right. So now, when you also did TFN as a rider, right? When was this?
2018. Yeah, 2018. No, 2017 or 2018. I'm not sure.
Yeah, 2017, I think.
2017, yeah. Yeah, 2018, 19, I shot it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, how did what kind of got you into that?
Okay, so 7 years back from now, which is 2004. No, 2014, 2015. Around 2015. Okay, so you are responsible in some way for this, because the standard, you are never good enough with the cycle you have. You always want the next cycle. And I went through a crazy phase where the road cycle, I mean, the MTB was just, I had a Trek 4300D. I used to I put thin tires on it, and I used to do stupid things like ride to Krishnagiri and come back, and then can't walk for the next 3 days. So I used to do 100K rides on those bikes. And then I was like, no. And I need to, and by then I was already shooting serious cycling. I had shot world championships. I had shot a lot of really, I mean, 2014 I had not shot world championships, but I had already traveled, seen a UCI race. I've seen a lot of top end cycling. The moment you are a fanboy of a sport, you end up doing stuff. I mean, at least you'll want to own a cycle. And I can't just own a cycle. I have a competitive streak in me. We have all been driven this competitive streak. We need to be the best of the best of the best. And so it took a while to realize you can't be the best of the best of the best. And so, but you still fight for the better version of yourself. So cycling turned out, in 2013 or 14, 2014 early, I was searching for bicycles, road bicycles to buy. I called you and checked whether a 58 frame will work, and he said, hey, that's way too big for you. And then you called me back and I said, hey, there is a 54 which is in Crankmeister. Quietly go buy it before anybody realizes it. It's a little big, but we can make it work. which is the bike I still own. And then once I bought it, I have to do. When I own something, I need to do justice to it.
Yeah.
I trained like a mad maniac. I mean, like pretty much anybody who knew me around that time, I was not pleasant. My wife was ready to leave me at that point. I used to cook separately for myself and separately for her. And because my recovery was more important, and I was always wearing compression socks in my house.
Yeah. Let's get into that a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit. So you got that bike and you how did that seed of wanting to do this event kind of take place?
Okay, so a lot of my friends, okay, so my cycling life up till that point was a lot based on people who I knew. And everybody I had met was through TFN.
Right.
Tour of Nilgiris became this one thing that connected the dots.
Correct.
I fought with them, I disagreed with them, but they are like family, as in, like, I know them so very well. And this whole thing of traveling in, and I've shot that. By that time I had shot the event at least for 2 years or 2 3 years at that point.
Right.
And I knew how beautiful it was, and how, and I mean, how people pushed past their abilities.
Right.
And so for me, and I've been a part of recce's of TFN. I've hung around the whole thing, and for me, it's like a, someday you have to do it. I mean, like, if you keep seeing this great, beautiful thing, and then at some, you keep telling yourself, someday you have to do this. Someday you have to do this. And I'm not the guy who will say someday I will climb Mount Everest. I know I don't want to climb Mount Everest, but these are things I've seen and I've experienced. Now I want to ride it, and now when you ride it, you want to get stronger. And I have this philosophy in my head saying, if you want to, I mean, especially a cycling thing, I used to tell this to my subjects in TFN, saying, if you want a good picture, look good in the picture. Right. So for me, the thing is, if I have to look good in the picture, I need to be strong. I need to be really strong to, at least when I'm suffering, I don't look like a rank idiot. So I had to put in the effort. So that kind of one led to another. That 7 8 months, I was obsessed. I think I've taken buses to go to Kalati, to recce Kalati, and that was one crazy phase. It taught me a whole bunch about myself and what I can push myself past.
You trained like crazy. I know that, and the event itself. How did it feel as a rider? Doing it, you by this time you have been on the tour shooting.
That was my 4th year, including my shoot years.
Right.
As a rider, different experience, man. I mean, like, it started, this was the last, I think one of the last years where Bangalore was a start point, I think. So you leave Bangalore, very symbolic. And on day one, it still blows my mind, because there was some traffic jam inside the city, and I didn't know that I had slipped past that cordon. And I know this route so well as a photographer that I know where to go. Right. And I slipped past the cordon and I'm cycling, and this is by far the strongest I've ever been. And I'm cycling like a breeze on nice road, and there is no cyclist ahead of me, no cyclist behind me. I'm like, shit, am I leading TFN out? And it's a crazy feeling. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, you see Niels dragging Viju, like it's as if Viju had a leash on his neck and getting dragged by Niels, and they just zoop past me somewhere leaving Bangalore on the Magdi Road or something. I'm like, holy fuck, I've been actually in front. And now you feel like, wow, you're actually feeling strong. And then I've never ridden with groups. I'm not a group rider. I train alone. I'm a lone rider. And I like my alone time on an endurance effort. And this kind of changed that. You had your groups, you had friends that you made. I made some seriously awesome friends who used to ride with you morning, evening, afternoon. Whether you are they much stronger riders, they'll fix your flat for you. Crazy stuff, man. And then you kind of understand why people do this in the first place. And as a photographer, for me, massive, because now when I approach cycling, there is a part of me that I know. I mean, there is, how it's going to pan out, and you love the way it's going to this thing. I can explain all I want to another photographer, but if he doesn't understand cycling, he doesn't understand cycling. Yeah, it's a very different experience. And when you do it yourself, the first time you do color T and the second time you do color T, you feel super strong at the start line. 1 kilometer after climb, you're cursing yourself, saying, "Why the hell am I even doing this to yourself?" And everything looks like that. And crazy experience, man. I mean, when a cyclist suffers as a photographer, you see it, but now when you suffer, you know what it means, and crazy. Yeah, it's a different experience.
It gives you a completely
Oh,
different
yeah,
perspective.
and the beauty and the suffering, and I mean, on the TFN that I rode on the last day, at that point, Freya and me had 6 dogs, and we lost our first dog. He was 13, and he just died. We just reached Valparai. We just reached Valparai, and we are already settled for the evening, and that's when Freya calls and says he doesn't look good, and then he dies. Next day, I have to ride all the way from Valparai down to Pollachi to board the bus to leave. And that's by far the most prettiest thing in a planet.
Right.
Early morning, all down, okay? All through T Estate, and you're just coasting through. There's no competitive segments there, and you just have a bus to catch. And now, this whole thing of you've lost somebody at home, and it's surreal, isn't like it's like the world talking to you, and if you're alone, it's a different feeling. And TFN can be different things for different people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, it's a very personal and an awesome experience as a rider, at least.
Right. 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 So now you covered TFN, afterwards also, right? So what they did, so before riding the tour, you shot a few years, and after riding the tour, you shot a few years as well. Did anything change in your photography, the way you shot or the way you perceived the shots?
Yeah, well, yes and no. As a cyclist, I changed. I mean, it's a gap of massive years. I mean, my first TFN was 2011. My last TFN was 2018. So that's a gap of 7-8 years. I had evolved as a person. I have evolved as an I wouldn't call myself an athlete, but a fitness
You are
person.
an athlete.
Okay, call myself. Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm on a working athlete podcast, so I am an athlete. So, my perspectives changed, and my approach to life and photography itself changed. The stories that I look for are very different. I've done stories on the markers of Tour of Nilgiris. With each time when I go back, I look for things that I haven't done the previous year. Because there's no point in going back and doing the same thing again and again and again.
Right.
It doesn't do justice to the event. For me, it was about the event. The reason I kept going back was the event itself. The more I looked at as if the event grows, I grow. And that's how I approach anything cycling.
Right.
And if the sport grows, I grow.
Right.
And the narrative kept changing, and it was never always about the participant of Tour of Nilgiris. At least in Tour of Nilgiris, slowly I moved away from focusing on a participant to other narratives that were more important to talk about. The suffering, the pain, the volunteers. There's a whole bunch of stuff that takes to put a show like that on field.
Right.
And when you see it from behind the scene as a cyclist, you see a very different story. So you want that narrative to come out. So at least that's how I changed as a photographer. But when I shoot competitive cycling, completely a different ball game. My perspectives are very, very different.
Right, right. So you talking about competitive cycling, you have been covering for nationals for a long time now. So what was your first nationals?
My first nationals, yeah, I think it was 2015 national, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, 2015 nationals happened in 2016 Feb.
Okay.
Because it couldn't happen in 2015, so CFI had moved it, and I did it. Yeah, this was the one on the same year as the World Champs. I did it because I just wanted to. I was tired of shooting BBC Edge, and I was like, what is the point of shooting a bunch of people going on cycles? It's just a pretty picture with some. There should be something more. And going to nationals, okay, so how does nationals work? I mean, I just needed to understand the whole ecosystem, and going to a federation run event, it's a change in itself. You get accustomed to new things and how it operates. How does the system work? And that was my first year, and that was the I think that was the last year Loki was riding, and a lot of characters from back then still are riding and are amazing friends. The federation has been amazing to me over the years in terms of it's also like a relationship that I've built over the years that I come do my job of documenting the event. And for me, nationals was like it slowly became the most important thing in my personal photography calendar, like even now. I don't really care about anything else in cycling, but the nationals has to be documented because that's the highest level of cycling activity in India.
In India.
And if that is documented, I have done my piece for the sport. And for me, this last block was the tough one because I tried doing all three nationals: MTB nationals, road nationals, track nationals. So for me, that was like, and I most cases I self-fund these things. I mean, the print sale that we spoke about literally funded the track nationals. I sold prints and then I went to Hyderabad and ate some really basic stuff. And we and you should. I mean, you've been to nationals, so only when you're there in nationals you kind of realize how crazy it gets. So this year I tried doing three. So going forward, that's my thing. I want to do three nationals every year. MTB nationals, road nationals, track nationals, which is a serious commitment to take. But let's see. I mean, inshallah, I should be able to do that.
Yeah. These things are like you said, it's not somewhere like you know, very luxury places that you go to, or it's not a luxury experience. You know, if anything, it is a very difficult experience to kind of you know, even for the organizers, for the riders, for you know someone like you covering the event, it's not a very easy event to. But what kind of drives you to keep doing it?
It's every year people have their own pilgrimage of sorts, stuff they do for themselves. Like some people go to Sabrimala, some people they'll have their own mental, like some people go to tour of Nilgiris. For me, going to nationals is that one thing. It pushes me out of my comfort zone. Way out of my comfort zone. You think you have planned for the event and land up at the event, and all your plans go out of the window on the day you land up there. And with each year, you plan better, you get good. And the moment you keep doing it, there are more people who will see you do it and who will come and do it, which means there are more people documenting the event than just yourself. Like the last nationals, I saw more photographers, which is amazing because I can just go and do whatever I want to do, and I know that there are other photographers also taking pictures. Sport is growing. Check. So for me, doing nationals again and again that's the highest level of Indian sport. And there is a whole challenge. I have seen athletes struggling their way up to be at the start line. What people see is the results. Over the last 8-10 years of me documenting sport, the one thing I've learned is result doesn't matter. It's the effort that is involved to be at the start line. The challenges one faces to be at the start line without complaining that they have been shortchanged, without complaining that they just put in the effort, be at the start line, take whatever result comes and move on and come back the next year again. That changed me to that kind of like, and every time there are these characters. Jamkandi nationals, everybody, we all spoke up. I mean, NJ's double nationals, blah, blah, blah. Like a lot of focus. But the story that still stuck with me, I mean, I still like it's such a personal experience with NJ winning and 2 medals and stuff because we were like right there. Okay, so that's different. I mean, but for me, the thing was Aman. Aman wins this silver medal in his ITT, and then everybody is expecting to win the road race.
Right.
Last 100-meter crash, there's like at least 5 collarbones, according to me, which kind of popped in that last 100 meters. Aman was one of the collarbone. We were in Jamkandi.
Yeah.
I think were you there in the?
I was there.
You were in the hospital.
No, I did not.
Okay,
make it
so
to the
I
hospital,
still
but
remember. I still remember sitting in the car in the hospital, and I didn't know what to tell his dad. His dad was shattered.
Yeah.
And mentally, I was telling myself, like, you know what? That's it.
Yeah.
This dad is not going to let his son come back into the sport the next year.
Right.
But I was proven wrong. Next year, they come back and win both the medals.
Both the medals, yeah.
So, and now that year, so the next year when I went back, I'm like, how does a parent's head work? I mean, like, so that was my question. So every time I go back with this question saying, so how does the parents' mind work? How are the organizers managing to put up a show here?
Right.
The last nationals was an achievement in Bombay. I mean, with COVID, just one of those like, and they still largely there were a lot. I mean, there was a whole bunch of complaints on how things could have been. I can't see that because I mean, just it was so easy to call it off and saying no nationals because of Corona.
Yeah.
But they still ran it.
Right.
So for me, all of this is the one thing that I like going back to nationals.
Yeah. So you know, few things kind of struck to me, in what you just said, and I want to slightly expand it on that. So one is like looking at various people, the struggles they make to make it to the start line.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of sacrifices they had to make, and you get to watch them, learn from it, and document it and share it with the world.
Yep.
Like I remember you doing a series of about the support system of the riders, like riders and their parents being there at the nationals, which is very touching, and which is something that not many people get to know. They don't, I guess they take it for granted, or they don't really think about what is going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean,
for the riders to be doing it, right?
It's kind of crazy. As in, like, there are parents who made career decisions based on children's cycling ability.
Yeah.
And I still remember one of the big things is this Pehova Nationals. I think it happened 2 years back. Pehova Nationals. I met Shiven's parents because it's somewhere close to Haryana, and I think Shiven's dad is his mom is a chemistry teacher and his dad is a librarian, or vice versa. And I mean, like, your librarian. I mean, like, now I think back about the librarians I met. I mean, like, what motivated them or what made them okay with their son putting himself through crazy stuff? And he's just 22. I mean, he's just barely 22, and he's the current MTB national champion. And this was much before he became an MTB national champion. And he's had some horrible stuff happen to him on the cycle. And then he picks himself up, comes to the start line. So this is just one character. And then you had character after character. And with each nationals, you had a different set of characters. We had Sam in the same year that Aman did a double. She did a double. And she did a double by a mile. As in, she was way ahead of the pack. I thought she was going on a warm-up ride when the pack was like behind. And then the next year she didn't turn up for whatever reasons. And then again, there were another set of characters from the year after that. And you stay in touch with these people. Aman doesn't cycle competitively anymore, but I still see him on Strava, like, killing it on his runs. And for me as a person, as much as I'm talking about, it's a very selfish thing. I learned so much from each of these characters. They are way younger than me. And I was way stupider at that age. And there's so much I can learn from how the parents deal with the children, how the children themselves are responsible. And then older people, as people get older, it's the dilemmas that they face. And when you say older athletes, they are at least 6, 7 years younger than me. And they feel that they're very old. And they're like, okay, Geez, this is an interesting phase. I mean, like, so, I mean, the last nationals we were discussing that Naveen Raj has been to 10 nationals. Like, I've
Wow.
just been to 6.
Yeah.
Sports Anonymous has been to 6, and he's
Yeah.
been to 10.
Yeah.
And he's had, like, and he keeps going every year.
Yeah.
And he's come six times
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
in the men's elite ITT. I think he's come six times.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's, I mean, if somebody says you're going to be the 6th best in the country, I would take it.
Yeah.
But when you do it 6 times, what makes you what motivates you to pick up your cycle and train and come back the next day?
And keep trying.
Exactly. And all the people above you, you know what work they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a very self thing for me. That's where I learn from. That's where I learned photography from. That's where I learn life skills from, survival skills from. And there are days wherein when I come back, when I'm eating and I'm complaining that I don't have some food, I'm like, on a race day, this will be a very delicious food. I will just eat it without complaining and go. And when I'm shooting again, I learn so much. I mean, there's only so much reaction time in a cycling event. Nobody's going to stop, pose for me, and take pictures. I mean, the event happens. You shouldn't kill somebody accidentally. So you need to be careful. There's a whole bunch of things lying around. After that, you go to a commercial shoot. It feels like so easy. Life is going super slow. So it's always, as a photographer, it's very important to do something for yourself. Cycling photography was the one thing that I was doing for myself. And it so happens to be doing well. And I am grateful to the community. I mean, largely it's the community.
Yeah. I mean, like, so it might be something that you are doing it for yourself, but what ended up, I mean, what is happening as a result is that we are getting to watch follow the nationals through your eyes, follow the stories behind the nationals, and it, and a lot of people, a lot of others, like you said, a lot of others photographers are getting inspired and are showing up and giving their own perspectives. So it is inspiring us, it is inspiring an younger generation of riders, and inspiring another generation of photographers. So it is absolutely gold for the sport itself. Absolutely gold for the sport itself.
I'm glad it is. And it's also a thing that a friend put in my head saying, if you don't tell the story, did it even happen?
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing, right? If a tree falls in the forest, did it, and no one hears about it, did it really
fall?
happen?
It's so. And nationals have been the last nationals I went to was the 25th nationals. Since I've been documenting it, 6 nationals long. So there were 19 nationals before that. We don't know visually how it looked, how it felt, and it also is good for the sport. It's good for the athlete. There are reference points of how the sport has progressed. A lot of people keep telling me, like, we still haven't progressed in as a country in the sport and blah blah blah, but I've seen 6 nationals, and the 6th national is the best national. The last nationals I saw has always been the best nationals I've seen till then. Organizationally, they have managed something I would have chickened out of.
Absolutely. So that's something that I wanted to touch upon as well. So you have seen nationals starting from 2015 to now, and so what are the things that you're seeing improving, in terms of, say, it is a massive endeavor, right? It is a
One of the biggest problem people keep talking about, there's a lot of stuff that I read online saying how this could have been done better and blah blah blah. And the one thing that people don't realize is, to run nationals, you need a closed circuit. You need a 10 to 20 kilometer road loop which can be closed from vehicular traffic. And you might be whoever you are, open challenge, try to block an Indian road for 5 days.
Yeah.
It will not happen. You will not get permissions.
Yeah.
Because in India, livelihood is more important than sporting activity.
Yeah.
And there are some places it can happen where there are local patrons who are helping. Like when it happened in Bikaner, it was the railways who keep doing that. Railways and the services, they have a big base there, and it's their road, and they can literally say this section of the road we are barricading, and the next section you can do it. That's one of the reasons why we don't have creative racetracks.
Jamkandi also.
Jamkandi also. And you need patrons. You need local community patrons who can talk to the local administration to block roads for 4-5 days.
Right.
And this is a safety norm which has to be this thing. One of the reasons that dictates nationals is that. And the next thing is the logistics in terms of money involved, and there are commissars. People have to come, and pretty much most of the athletes are 90% of the athletes who come, which is about 700, 800 athletes, have to be provided accommodation, food, stay.
Yeah.
I have seen the accommodation, food, stay become good, better. And like the last one I saw was one of the, like, it was a legit accommodation that I saw in Bombay. And then over a period, I've also seen athletes changing. They don't depend on the association to provide everything. And people who want to perform, they figure their own life out. They stay separately. They have their own support structure. They don't bank on this support, from the association itself, which is important because the association now has enough bandwidth to figure stuff for other people.
Right.
So it's this whole thing that comes through the local community, the local people, the athletes themselves putting together a show for 3-4 days. It's not perfect. Let me put it that way. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
We are far from being perfect, but we are making huge progress.
Yeah.
And if you have seen all three different sports like track, road, and MTB, you will see track is way better organized because it's a contained space and everything happens in a contained space.
Yeah.
In fact, it's like world class, and hence, and that's the focus of the association also. They want to focus more on track because you can churn out more world class athletes there.
Right.
And road and MTB has a very different set of way it's organized because it's geographically you need to have space and stuff available.
Right.
But it's got phenomenally better over the years. What are the specifics? I'm not sure about specifics, but
you see the improvements and
massive.
Yeah, awesome. So you have covered some many events outside India as well. Like you mentioned covering world championships. I remember that picture from of you taking the Sagan's
Oh
sprint
yeah,
win.
yeah.
And you've been to Belgium, covering the journey of the Indian camp there with Naveen John. And you've been to events like PVP and stuff. So what are some of the memorable memories from
memories? Oh yeah, there's like everything is a memory, man. Dating back to 2015 or 2014, I'm not sure. Every international experience has taught me new things. Tour of Friendship with Vivek and Kinkini was my first international event. I didn't know jack shit about cycling. I just went there clueless, and that was the first event I realized that if you want to be a good cycling photographer, you need to be strong. You need to be physically be able to be there from the start of the race to the end of the race. If you're like a chain smoking guy who can't even last 2 hours, you are fried. And Thailand, you've been to Tour of Friendship. The heat
it's a brutal environment. Like
sucks the life out of you.
It's so hot and humid.
And I learned about the sport starting there. As in, I still remember Naveen NJ in the break. And then I don't know about break and peloton following, nothing. And we go on our moto and like look up like, awesome Naveen, I take pictures. And he's like, how far are they behind? I was like 2 minutes. And he's like, I said 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I'm not sure. Somewhere between 2 or 3 minutes, and he's like, shit, I'm screwed. I'm like, why is he saying he's screwed? He's ahead by 3 minutes. That looks quite far. And you don't understand why he's saying, I didn't understand the sport. early experiences. Then slowly, my next event was Tour de Korea, which is an UCI. At that year, it was Asia Tour. And you had the World Tour team, Orica Green Edge, participating in it. And that was the Neo-Pro year for Caleb even.
Tour de Korea, how did you end up there?
It was Cycling IQ. We had a friend who used to run a online magazine called Cycling IQ.
Correct, yeah.
And he kind of had said, "Hey, would you want to come and cover this event as a reporter, not as a photographer, but as a reporter?"
Okay.
And I said, "Okay, it's an experience." And I didn't know how the event worked. I took the race book. There was a race book. Every event, UCI event has a race book, and then I took the race book and I had gone to Naveen's house, and he's like, "Dude, what do I do? I don't know anything, and I have to listen to a radio and report." I don't even see the race. I am ahead of the fellow, above by 5 kilometers.
Okay.
And I just hear race radio, what's happening in the group. So now, and there were some really interesting characters who I still follow. One is Caleb even. That was his first big year. And since he had a Korean route, there was pretty much all stages were designed for him. Everything was a sprint finish.
Right.
There was one climbing day, I guess. And he won. And then the second place, the guy who came second place, Patrick Bevan. I think Paddy Bevan now rides with, I forgot, UAE. I don't know if I forgot. CCC? No. So Paddy Bevan and Caleb Bevan were in this thing. And then I got to sit in Orica Green Edge's car, race car. And then what happens in a race car? I was just a fanboy. I mean, I couldn't be logical and unbiased because I was just like this kid in a candy store. I sat. One of my greatest experience was being in Avanti. There was a pro cycling team called Avanti. Australian based. You had greats like Richie Port come through that team.
Correct.
They had their director sportive is this guy called Andrew Christie Johnson. He's one of the greatest cycling brains I have met. Such a humble, normal person. You wouldn't even realize that he's such a beautiful cycling brain. And then I got to spend a day in his car and then him discussing the various strategies with his team, and he's driving, and then how does a fellow work. And so with each experience I went out of India, it was massive. Like World Championships, I was just a fanboy. It was happening in Qatar. I somehow pieced together $1,000 to go to Qatar, got Pest to pitch and cover some pictures and I recover my cost. After I booked my tickets, I realized NJ and Arvind are also going to be there in Qatar.
Right.
Which is massive.
That year they were taking part.
It was not planned. We didn't plan for it. I had already booked my ticket. I had already got my accreditation. Then NJ calls me from Australia and like, maybe I am going to be there in Qatar. And then he's like, could we share our Airbnb? I'm like, great, I can split the bill with one more human being. So we were right next to the start line. We had really planned it well. At least logistically, we had planned it well. That was my first experience of shooting pro cycling at that level. Right. And that also helped me decide that I don't want to shoot pro cycling at that level. But it got me to see, I saw Boonen, I saw Cavendish, I saw Sagan, pretty much Tom Dumoulin walking with a toilet paper roll. Oh, geez. I pretty much like Eddie. I mean, I took selfies with Eddie Merckx. It was my So and I had access. I mean, as a photographer, I could go. I had an extra access to go to places where regular people couldn't get to. Right. Which was massive. So World Championships was a fanboy thing. Will I do it again? Maybe not. Too expensive and too many people already doing it. I would want to focus only on Indian cycling from going forward. Largely. Wherever Indians go. Belgium, that's one reason I preferred going to, I rank my 2-3 weeks in Belgium, Switzerland with the cycling boys as much better experience compared to World World Championships.
Right.
Belgium, I think I cried at least 3-4 nights at a stretch because it breaks you. I mean, living in a sports, living in a house with a bunch of athletes
Yeah.
when they are training
Yeah.
can like literally suck the life out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little more about that.
Well, what? They just train.
Yeah.
They eat, they
Yeah.
train. I
Yeah.
mean, in Belgium, that's all you do. You cycle, you come back, you eat,
Yeah.
sleep, wake up, cycle, come back, eat, sleep. And now, as a photographer, and I was shooting, I was not this organized in my head. So I was shooting from the time they wake up till the time they sleep. And then I have to eat and go to sleep again, wake up next day, do the same thing.
Yeah.
That gets to you because the kitchen the fridge was organized. I'll see if I can share some pictures.
Yeah.
The fridge was compartmentalized for each person.
Okay.
Our stuff and everything that you buy is billed separately. Your expenses are your expenses. There are some common things.
Yeah.
In spite of the fact that I'm just a photographer, I live like an athlete.
Yeah.
So when I'm shooting the race or shooting some training ride, the boys are like, Che, you go, I will go home and prepare dinner for you, lunch for you. You come and give me some awesome pictures and you take up pictures. And then I have to cycle with them. I had a e-bike that I had rented.
Okay.
That's a best way to travel if you're shooting cyclists.
Right.
Which means that at 25 kilometers an hour, the battery assist cuts off. And the cyclists start going faster only after that. As in, like, they just warm up at that speed and then they start plowing past, which means you have to cycle harder.
Yeah.
So with each race, you have to travel 60 kilometers up, 60 kilometers back, take pictures there, come back. Oh, crazy. And then there were like times wherein my phone popped out of my cycle, broke. There was a day where I got lost on my cycle on the cycling track, and I had to find Google Map my way and come back to the house. Crazy. And then you barely had money. You're pretty much living on pennies.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we smuggled bread to Switzerland because it was expensive to buy bread in Switzerland.
Yeah.
By the time we reached Switzerland, breads became like chapatis. So we called it brapatis. Put jam in it and slather and eat.
Fancy athlete life.
Yeah. And then I had a lounge card in airport. So me and Aman used to go to the lounge and steal food and come back and give it to others. I used to have a flask, fill it with coffee, grab all the bread you can grab, come back, give it to everybody. We felt like Robin Hood.
Awesome.
Yeah, so Belgium was like crazy, man. I mean, like, it's living on the edge. I mean, like, if you're a cyclist, you need to train in Europe, and the best place would be Belgium, hands down. And the cycling culture in Belgium is such a, like, when I'm old, that's what I want to do. Go and watch a classic, or just spend 1 month in Belgium drinking beer and eating chips and just betting on cycling races and becoming fat.
Nice. That's a nice goal to have. Okay, so you also did PPP as an event.
Yes, I did.
How was that actually?
Crazy. Brevets. Brevets is a different beast. I still don't get why people do brevets. Personally, because at least in a competitive athlete, you kind of know that you're trying to win something. Here, it's just a sense of achievement. And then you kind of turn your insides out to go and do it.
Right.
Bad enough you have to do it in Bangalore. Now you need to generate the funds, take a flight from here to France, and then cycle 1,200 kilometers. And this event is once in 4 years, not even every year.
Yeah.
Geez. And then, it's very different for me. If I am doing, while shooting PPP, I think the one question that kept ringing in my head is like, why do people do this?
Yeah, and it's like thousands and thousands of people from all around the world.
All age groups.
Yeah,
all crazy cycles. All shapes and cycles. You had unicycle, you had like, craziness. And then, and I'm on a motorcycle. I had a friend who's riding me on a motorcycle, and then you'll see cyclists ride early in the morning. Beautiful frame. And I'm taking pictures of the frame, and then I'm like, where is the cyclist? He just swerved and went into the ditch because he slept off on the wheel and just like,
oh, crazy.
And no language, some insane stories that you hear in the night, and you ride through the night. It's freezing cold. I'm on a motorcycle. It still was freezing cold. Indians should never complain about cold.
Yeah.
Like Europe, and then they're like, no, it was very pleasant, and I'm like, geez, it's bone chilling cold. Yeah, PvP different experience. It's human endurance at its limits. For regular people, they're not even like I don't see athletes. Athletes, they're like what you call like people with regular lives, jobs, family, kids, doing the PvP, and once in 4 years, small decisions that they make may made big difference. Do you sleep now? Do you don't sleep now? Do I wait for this guy? Do I don't wait for this guy?
Yeah.
And some sections are hilly and windy. How do you strategize 1,200 kilometers at one stretch?
Right.
Where does it end? Yeah, so yeah, it was crazy. I went with a group of friends. I think we were like 5, 6 friends. I think Neville was the only one who finished it.
Okay. Yeah.
In within the cutoff, and rest of them bailed out. And when they bailed out, I was like, I wanted them to bail out. And normally you wanted to like, don't bail out, don't push. But I was at my limits as a guy who was just watching it, and I was like, no, this is not correct. Let's just go home. PvP is different.
Yeah. So you realize over covering these events like you mentioned when covering tour of friendship and events like PvP that you need that endurance as a photographer as well to be able to survive these events and covering these events. So is that why you train now, like you do running, you do cycling,
Earlier, my training routine was largely, mm, yeah, it was all over the place. I didn't have clarity on why I was training. I just had yearly goals. Like the year I was doing TFN, I just wanted to be so good at my. I had Roval wheels that I borrowed. I was there. I came eighth in the masters category.
Right.
This is with, if they added color tea time, I would have gone higher. So it was just a competitive streak, and Strava just started leaderboards and like, how badass are you, kind of a thing. But later, my personal training was largely tuned towards the way of life that I live. For every big cycling event that I intend to shoot, I put in at least 4 to 6 weeks, minimum 4 to 6 weeks, a maximum of 16 weeks of training block before every event. And like last year, I was one of the fittest. Now I shifted largely towards running rather than cycling for my physical training, because running is bang for the buck, time wise.
And also it gives you the flexibility while you're traveling, right?
I just have to carry running shoes. I can run anywhere. Cycling became a little more cumbersome. There were too much equipment involved, too much safety issues, and I had a bad car accident in 2008, 17, 18-ish, after which I had massive issues clipping into the bike and heading out onto the road. Running itself, I don't know. Running just consumed me. And now I do a whole bunch of things to be fit, and it becomes a lifestyle after a while. It's not about the one goal that I have for the year. It's about my overall. Some days you go hard, some days you go easy. So now, last 2 years, since the pandemic began till now, I think first half of the pandemic, I just went ape shit crazy, 60 kilometers a week running, and then 2 days of cycling. And now I've completely gone 10 months of yoga and easing out, full low intensity training. It's not about the running, it's about strength. I'm 41 right now, so my body, I kind of realize I need to focus more on my strength rather than my endurance. Endurance is something I can build over 10 weeks. As long as I keep the engine alive, whenever I need to scale it up, I can scale it up, but I'm not competitive anymore. I run alone, I train alone. It's a very personal, fitness has been a very personal experience, a journey for me at least.
Right. So, but the being a freelancer and entrepreneur is not easy, right? It has its own challenges. You don't know when your next payment is coming from, or from where it is coming, and all that. So it also gives, brings a lot of mental health issues, It is, it is something that everyone would have, but also it is, we get to see that more with in entrepreneur kind of lifestyle, right? So
True.
do you think what helped you deal with that? Do you think endurance sport helped
Mm,
you?
okay, let me put it out there first because this is something very personal to me.
Mm.
It's not only a freelancer.
Mm.
Pretty much, according to me, 80% of adults, human adults, are completely messed up in their head.
Mm.
We
I
don't
completely agree.
we don't value mental health. There
Right.
is so much emphasis on physical health,
Mm.
but we just push mental health, saying, "Ha, we are strong, we are
Right.
built better for that."
Right.
We don't work it. I mean,
Mm.
we don't do anything to get mentally strong.
Right.
We don't mentally condition. And if you notice, athletes at the highest level of sport, mental conditioning is an integral part of the sport.
Yeah.
How much of that are we doing?
Mm.
Zilch.
True.
So for me, endurance sport has taught me there are two prongs to it. Mental health being very important is one part of it. So, and I resisted therapy, like professional therapy, for a long time. The standard equation is like, I am not going loony. I don't want therapy, kind of a thing. But then I realized, oh, I mean, I was pushed in 2019. Social circumstances pushed me to a corner where everybody pointed saying, you need help.
Mm.
And then I started going to a therapist, and now I'm like, why the hell did I think of, why did I fight it? And I should have been doing this for a long time.
Mm.
So thanks to that, a lot of people around me, my family and friends, are more open to therapy because I also keep going to it. I keep going back every year. I mean, and I started accepting. I have anxiety attacks, as in like I can panic and like crumble into pieces.
Okay.
And for me to be accepting that and working on it is what has got better at it.
Right.
And now I know when I'm going into a dark space.
Mm.
How does endurance sport, as it happens, is again the whole athlete story. I mean, every time I go into the athletes and be hang around people, the insecurities that they face in their lives is nowhere. I mean, I cannot even comprehend. I mean, like, it's very difficult. I mean, they have very little returns. I work on commercial return on interest policies and bank balances and survival and stuff. Here, these guys just do it for the love of it most of the times.
Right.
There is something that is so high up there, and they will train all year for 5-6 years at a row for that mythical thing that they are trying to get to.
Mm.
And all you can do is just put the effort.
Right.
And this goes back to and that's something that I take personally also right now. Is that's the one thing I learned from the athlete. Your job is to put the effort,
Mm.
check the boxes,
Right.
and not I mean, results, if it happens, great.
Mm.
But then you just learn from what happens, and then you keep pushing forward. Because if this is what you enjoy doing,
Mm.
then results shouldn't matter.
Right.
And if you know cycling, most cyclists don't win at all.
Right.
Okay, Tour de France is going to start I mean, like, yeah, soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And out of the 150, 60 starters, 80% is not going to be at the podium. Forget win, or like, they're not even going to come close to.
Yeah.
Their job is to just be there and
Right.
work. And there is a whole, everybody has a role in that sport.
Right.
So for me, I have a role in my community. I have a role in the sport. I have the role in all the communities that I'm a part of. So my job is to just do the job.
Mm.
And if results happen, great.
Mm.
I'm not going to say, no, I don't want results. But if it happens, it feels amazing.
Right.
But that's not my motivation to.
Mm.
I don't go to national championships to take pictures and say I'm going to win an X award. I don't go saying I'm going to. I'm.
Yeah.
I just go to nationals because I enjoy shooting nationals, or I shoot cycling because I enjoy shoot cycling, and I make plans because it gives me happiness.
Yeah.
Whatever result comes out of it, gravy.
Great. Awesome. Awesome. So to kind of conclude this, any tips for working athletes?
Structured training. I keep telling this to even pretty much anybody who gives their ear to listen. Everybody thinks that they're not an athlete, but according to me, fitness has to be a lifestyle. It has to be like brushing your teeth. A lot of people have issues if they don't brush their teeth. They feel all nauseous and stuff. So you should feel like that if you're not physically doing stuff.
Right.
And I believe the one big thing I've learned is having structured training. Because like all things, you eat an X amount of food. Everybody knows calorific intake for the day. And like, why don't people know how much they need to work out in a week or what is good for them physically to work? Structured training, prehab over rehab. That's one big learning that I've learned. Strength training is extremely important. Endurance can always be built. Working with physios, working with great physios like Dhananjay and Yash, and it helps because they kind of identify these. Working with professionals help you identify something is weak before it breaks,
Right.
and before you need a surgery. And all this helps in the long run because this is the greatest machine that you have.
Right.
Better than a funeral or dogma.
Right.
Money can't buy this.
Yes.
So, and you can't get spares as well. So it's best to maintain it really, really well, mentally, physically, and that has to have a structured plan. Like I have a structured plan for the year, as in, and then I have a bird's eye view of what I want to do for 4-5 years, which keeps evolving.
Right.
This year is all about being just mentally and physically in a great space. Build a big endurance base, slow and steady. And yeah, the biggest tip I would say for an working athlete is get a coach, some form of structured athlete. I mean, well, you are a coach, and then you have a whole bunch of coaching options in triathlon, in running. You had Shreyas who came and spoke here, and you had a whole bunch of people who coach as well.
Right.
And whichever sport you are, get a coach who can think for you, and you just follow the coach. The next big thing is work on your strength. Strength is so underrated. Like it's more important than your long rides. Doing 2 strength session a week, 15 minutes long each or 20 minutes long each, is way more important than going and smashing yourself for 6 hours on the bike. So strength, get a coach. Photography wise, keep shooting. Yeah, well, it's the same thing with cycling. Everybody says, any working athlete or cycler, they'll say keep riding.
Yeah.
And so keep shooting. You'll get good at it.
Awesome.
That's pretty much it.
Great, Chet. Thank you for taking the time and coming and sharing your journey with the Working Athlete podcast. It's been a great pleasure having you on the show.
Awesome. It's been amazing. I didn't even know how long the time flew. Amazing experience. I've literally I've seen this come from the first episode onwards, so it's an amazing thing to be a part of it. I kept always thinking, when will Venki call? Will Venki call me? Will I even make the cut for Venki to call me? But yeah, I'm super, super honored to be a part of this whole podcast.
Awesome. And once more, print sale is on. Please reach out to Che for some amazing stuff on his from his portfolio. Is up for sale in various sizes. You can order and support his crazy, cycling and cycling goals in the future.
Yep.
And subscribe to the channel.
Yep.